All right, welcome to Leaders Meeting, everyone. So the title of today's lesson is Spiritual Pruning. And you may be thinking, what does that even mean? What does it mean to be spiritually pruned? I'm talking about challenges. Specifically, how do we overcome challenges? And more importantly, what is our mindset towards those challenges? And everyone has challenges. Doesn't matter if you're from China, from Nepal, or from Britain. No matter where you come from, each and every one of us face challenges. And that's the central point. The only certainty in life is the certainty of challenges. And you know, it's funny because I think a lot of people have this misconception, right? That sort of when you become Christian, when you become saved, right? Your challenges disappear. I became baptized. I'm blessed. I'm saved. No challenges for me. But that couldn't be farther from the truth. Because you see, before and after becoming baptized, we still face the same challenges in life. We still face the same struggles, regardless of where we sort of come from. And at the end of the day, becoming a Christian doesn't remove the challenges in our lives. So Hebrews chapter 10, verse 32 to 33. Here it says, "Remember those earlier days after you had received the light, when you endured in a great conflict full of suffering. Sometimes you were publicly exposed to insult and persecution. At other times, you stood side by side with those who were so treated." And the thing with challenges is that everyone faces challenges, but the challenges are unique and different for each and every one of us. After all, challenges and hardships can come in many different forms, and people struggle with many different things. So, you know, for some people, maybe it's financial struggles. Maybe I lost my job, or my job doesn't pay very well. Can I afford rent this month? Contribution is coming up. Can I afford that? Special contribution. Do I have enough in my bank account to cover that? Maybe for some people, it's family conflict. Perhaps after you became Christian, after you were baptized, maybe your family members didn't agree with that sort of conception, didn't agree, you know, with your style of choice, your style of living. Or maybe some people didn't grow up in a happy household. Or perhaps for some people, the challenges come from facing certain emotions. So for instance, maybe some people face challenges in idolatry. You know, I'll do many things for God. I'll preach for God. I'll lead Bible talks. But I don't want to give up my job for God. Other times, maybe perhaps it's envy. Perhaps you are sort of envious of certain people. Perhaps you sort of compare yourself to other people and sort of look at what they have compared to what you don't. And at the end of the day, regardless of whatever challenge you are facing today, these challenges in our lives can cause us to be less spiritual. And I want to give you guys an analogy. Think of our spirituality as like this battery, this AA battery. So when we first become baptized, when we're first saved, I like to think that our batteries are full. You know, we're also fired up to do sort of God's work. You know, I'm going to go preach. I want to preach. I want to lead Bible talks. I want to spread my faith to everyone and show them my relationship to God. But again, challenges are still present within our lives. Even as Christians, we still face many, many challenges. So, you know, maybe when you first became Christian, your spiritual battery was full. But, you know, as the challenges come by, for instance, financial struggles, perhaps you struggle, you know, living in Hong Kong. Perhaps your job doesn't pay as well. So that kind of diminishes your spirituality by a bit. Or for other people, maybe again, certain emotions, idolatry, anger, envy, that causes you to be less spiritual, reduces it a bit more. Or perhaps, again, for some people, family conflict, religious persecution, that causes people to be less spiritual, reduces it a bit more. And at the end of the day, regardless of whatever challenges you're facing now, everyone's spiritual battery is at different levels. For some people in this room, maybe it's at 100%. Others, 50%. Many more, 20%. And over time, as we face these challenges, and if we're not careful to monitor our own spiritual battery, that battery may die out. So I want to ask you guys, what challenges today are draining your spiritual battery? But we need not worry. After all, focusing on being faithful, focusing on sort of serving God and serving others spiritually recharges us. And I want to introduce the central theme of today's lesson. The theme in the sense that life is all about 10% of what happens to us and 90% of how we react to that. And again, although becoming a Christian doesn't remove our challenges, it does, however, teach us better how to overcome those challenges, how to overcome those struggles, and to develop our mindset further. And again, about the theme about 10% of what happens to you and 90% of how you react to it. I think it's very true. Think about it. Think of the people who you study the Bible with. I think as you study the Bible with more and more people, you notice more and more that they face the same challenges. And it doesn't matter where they come from. It doesn't matter about their religious background, whether they came from a Catholic background, atheist background, or otherwise, whether they came from a different country, local Hong Kong, mainlander. It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, you notice that no matter how different people are, the challenges are always the same. And again, we should also be mindful of why we are given challenges in the first place. So God gave us challenges for specific reasons, all of which is to ultimately help us spiritually grow. To spiritually grow our character and to spiritually grow our foundation of how we overcome those challenges. So John 15, verse 1-4. I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, so that it will be even more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Remain in me, as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. We aren't perfect. We're human. We have flaws. And we have aspects of ourselves that are sinful in nature. Aspects of ourselves that prevent us from being fully spiritual, that prevent us from being the best versions of ourselves that we can possibly be. And that's what God's pruning is for. Hence the theme, spiritual pruning. It is for us to become the best version of ourselves that we can possibly be. And it's funny because at the end of the day, when it comes to spiritual pruning, we don't get to decide that. God decides that. As long as we continue to face challenges in our lives, God will further and further test our foundation. He will test the strength of our spiritual battery, and He'll prune us and disciple us so we can better overcome these challenges. And so it's all about sort of how we react to that pruning, not exactly if we'll be pruned. And this lesson will mainly focus on Job, as Job was a great example of someone who was pruned by God. So if you're familiar with the book of Job, right, it follows the story of this, as described, a blameless and God-fearing man. He was described as the greatest man, one of the greatest men ever. But at the end of the day, he also faced challenges, no matter his greatness. He faced struggles like everyone else. And that's what God allowed Satan to test Job on. And actually, if you read the book of Job in its entirety, apart from the first and the last bits about Job's life, the middle section of Job's life, it's pretty challenging. It's pretty terrible, actually. Like, Job has experienced so many challenges, so many struggles that seem too insurmountable to bear. In fact, Job's life was so challenging, that us brothers like to do our communion on him. No names given, though. So today's lesson will be about 2 points. Sorry, Shaw. All right, without further ado, let's jump into the points. Point number 1, the 10% of life. So again, it follows the central theme about what life is about. Life is about a cycle of ups and downs. Life is a cycle about the good times and the bad times. So Ecclesiastes chapter 7, 13-14. Consider what God has done. Who can straighten what he has made crooked? When times are good, be happy. But when times are bad, consider this. God has made the one as well as the other. Therefore, no one can discover anything about their future. And I really like this scripture because it really reinforces the fact that as long as we accept the good, the miracles that come into our life, we also need to accept the bad, the struggles that also come as well. And the good times in life, I like to say, make us believe how strong we are. But the bad times show us how strong we actually are. And at the end of the day, no matter how great you are, or should I say, no matter how great you think you are, nobody is immune to the downsides of life. Nobody is immune to facing these struggles. Nobody is immune to facing challenges in life. And I want to give you my convicting example. So I think this happened. So we all know about sort of the heart attack I had around the beginning of the year. I think January 14th to be exact. And so we all know about that. But I don't think any of you know about sort of what I said to Chi 2 weeks earlier. So I said something to Chi that was very foreshadowing of my heart attack. And so this would have happened, I think, just the Sunday service just before New Year's, right? And this was, Sunday service. And after the preaching, right, Chi came up to me and he was like, oh, hey, Denzel, how was your day, right? How have you been doing so far? How's your life? And this is what I said to him, word for word. So, how was your day? My life is great. My life is so great. In fact, I can only go down from here. And I said that to Chi. I turned around and I walked away from him. And I think that's one of the worst examples of me being prideful and arrogant of myself. And the reason, so why did I say that? Why on earth would I say something so convicting to Chi and so prideful, right? Because, to be honest, that's how I felt. That's how I genuinely felt. Because if I just look at my life during that moment, just before I had that, health incident, right? So I think some of you already know, during this time, I had 3 internships, right? I was feeling, at the time, great on doing it because it was very sort of fulfilling for me in terms of sort of the status as well as, the monetary benefits of that. My grades were great. I had A's and A stars, Dean's List. So I was feeling pretty confident in myself. Popularity as well. I was pretty comfortable with the friends I had. I was comfortable with the connections that I made in university. So in my eyes, in my sort of pride and arrogance, I thought that I could have more. And I genuinely believed I can have more. And that's how I viewed myself. I viewed myself as this great person, this person who can achieve so much, a person who has so much ambition that the only thing stopping me is myself. But, through this example, that's clearly not the case. After I had that heart attack, things did go downhill from there, very fast too. I couldn't perform at my sort of internships as well as I could after the health incident. So I couldn't spend as much time, putting in the effort for my grades as well. So that kind of slipped a bit. But it really just goes to show, no matter how great you are, and generally great people can have great fall downs in life. And we can take Job as an example. Again, Job, if you read chapter 1, he was described as man of great character, this man of great wealth. So Job 1, verse 1 to 3. In the land of Uz, there lived a man whose name was Job. This man was blameless and upright. He feared God and shunned evil. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters, and he owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 donkeys, and had a large number of servants. He was the greatest man among all the people of the East. Wow. To be described as that, the greatest man of the East, just imagine how great your character is, just how well respected this man really was. And if you just go by this description, he generally had great wealth, he had great character. It seems so insurmountable. How can a man of this status have such a great fall down? Right. But, despite this, it really goes to show our foundation, the foundation that helps us overcome challenges, to overcome struggles, should be built on our convictions and our faith. Nothing more, nothing less. And the thing is, no matter how great it is to have these things, the material possessions, they don't build our spirituality. They don't build our faith. Our character makes us who we are. And I want to give a bit of an example, actually. So when Solomon was leading the church, right, around last year's summer, right, I think it was during Friday Bible Talk, he mentioned a quote that really stuck with me, and it was very wise of him, actually. He said this. So he said to me, sometimes people's convictions are only as good as their worldly things allow them to be. And think of it like this. For instance, your conviction of being generous, giving money to charity, that's great, but it's different, it's relative. How well will you feel giving to charity, let's say, when you have $100,000 in the bank versus a measly $100 in the bank? It's very different. And at the end of the day, our foundation and ability to deal with challenges, yet again, it comes from God and God alone. So I want to ask you guys, are you putting your trust in God, or are you putting your trust in worldly things to help you overcome challenges? So because of this point, God allowed Satan to test Job on his convictions precisely for this matter. So let's drop down Job chapter 1, 8 to 12. Then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. Does Job fear God for nothing? Satan replied, have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has? You have blessed the work of his hands, so that his flocks and herds are spread throughout the land. But now stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. The Lord said to Satan, very well, then, everything he has in your power, but on the man himself do not lay a finger. Then Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. At the end of the day, material possessions, they won't save you. They won't save you from challenges. They won't solve your challenges for you. Possessions don't build character. Character builds character. Character helps you overcome challenges. And I like the book of Job as well, because it really challenges the idea of the reason why people face struggles, why they face challenges. Because back then, right, when someone was facing challenges, it was usually because people thought that they sinned, that they wronged God for some reason. And it was more like, if you saw someone struggling, the reaction was, stay away from me, evildoer. I never knew you. But it wasn't like that. We don't see that in the book of Job. Again, he's described as this great man, the greatest man, one of the greatest men ever. But he faced one of the biggest challenges ever. And this is why God allows us to be tested. He allows us to build our foundation. And it may seem I understand, it may seem cruel from this aspect. Why does God inflict us with these challenges? Why does he give us struggles? But God doesn't give us struggles because he wants to hurt us. He does not give us challenges to break our spirituality. He does so because he trusts us to be faithful in times of trial and temptation. And he takes great pride when we overcome that temptation. And I want to give you another analogy. Think of it like this. So God is our heavenly Father. He's the Father, the spiritual Father to us all. And it's every father's role and responsibility to not only love their children, but to also disciple them as well, discipline their children. Proverbs 3, 11 to 12. My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline, or be wary of his reproof. For the Lord reproves him whom he loves, as a father, the son in whom he delights. A father is meant to ensure that their child can survive out there in the real world, that the child can overcome challenges on their own, to overcome struggle independently, can turn from a boy to a man. And at the end of the day, because challenges are constant in our lives, we are going to be discipled either way. It is only a matter of who disciples us. So, do you choose to be discipled by God or by the world? That's on you. And so, just like this, Job was challenged in all aspects of his life. Firstly, Job lost his possessions and his livelihood. Job 1, 13 to 15. One day, when Job's sons and daughters were feasting and drinking wine at the oldest brother's house, a messenger came to Job and said, "The oxen were plowing and the donkeys were grazing nearby, and the Sabaeans attacked and made off with them. They put the servants to the sword, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you." And if you drop down, continue reading to verse 17, it just continues again about all the different cattle, Job has lost. Again, Job lost his children as well. 18 to 19. While he was still speaking, yet another messenger came and said, "Your sons and daughters were feasting and drinking wine at the oldest brother's house, when suddenly a mighty wind swept in from the desert and struck the four corners of the house. It collapsed on them, and they are dead. And I am the only one who has escaped to tell you." And then if you continue reading on, Job also lost his health, his physical health. Job 2, 5 to 7. "But now stretch out your hand and strike his flesh and bones, and he will surely curse you to your face. The Lord said to Satan, 'Very well then, he is in your hands. But you must spare his life.' So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and afflicted Job with painful sores, from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head." And in fact, the physical afflictions that Satan did to Job were extremely grievous. So much so that, when his friends eventually came to visit him, Job was described as this unrecognizable person, even from a large distance. This hurts. These challenges hurt us. It's not easy to experience this loss. But the loss from these challenges, it really reveals our heart. Because at the end of the day, possessions, health, our family, they're important in our lives. We take great pride in having them, so much so that they're essential to who we are. But the question is, are we valuing these things greater than God? Are we valuing these things and relying on them to help us overcome our challenges? This is why God tests us precisely for these things, because they're the greatest things that we value in our lives. And at the end of the day, the loss of this, the loss from struggle, from challenges in our lives, that shows how our foundation is built. The foundation that really helps us overcome challenges. But what's amazing is that Job, he never blamed God for these afflictions. He never blamed God for all the loss, for all the miracles that was withdrawn from his life. He always remained faithful despite all these terrible things that happened to him. And even so, Job, from a, should I say, human perspective, he had every right to turn away from God. Like if you read chapter 1 through 2 in its entirety, the time duration of all of these challenges, all these terrible things that happened to Job, it wasn't over a long duration of time. They happened pretty much back to back. Like if you read chapter 1, it's just servant after servant telling Job that, "Hey, you lost your cattle. I'm the only one to tell you. Your sons and daughters died. I'm the only one surviving to tell you." This is devastating. But again, it reminds us, and Job is reminded as well. He understood that if we accept the good times, the miracles that God gives us in our lives, we also must accept the bad times, the challenges. Job 2, verse 5 to 7. His wife said to him, "Are you still maintaining your integrity? Curse God and die." He replied, "You are talking like a foolish woman. Shall we accept good from God and not trouble?" In all this, Job did not sin in what he said. Again, God gave us miracles and blessings. In the same way, and the same power he has to do that for us, he can easily take it away from us. And I really appreciate Job's mentality here. No matter how devastated he was, no matter how bad his mental state was in his time of need, in this time of challenge, he never cursed God. He never blamed God. He always kept the integrity of his faith. So I want to ask you guys, is this how your quiet times are? Quiet times, it's very nice to have when we're in the good times. We can always praise God, thank you for Friday Bible talk, thank you for giving me a job, thank you for the interviews. But do we also thank God for the challenges he gives us? Do we also thank God when we are in times of struggle? We should be. And hardships give us a better understanding about life. They really show us about just how life works, essentially. And I want to give you an example. I want you guys, just think about your conversion story, right? What was the decision that made you to seek God? I don't know everyone's conversion story here, but I'm sure you had maybe something you were seeking, perhaps something lacking in your life. Maybe you were in a position like Job. Maybe you were challenged like him. Perhaps you were seeking God because you wanted something more. At the end of the day, you see things in yourself that you never saw before. And that is like the true foundation of how it is to have a faith and a relationship with God. So that's the 10% of life. Point number 2, the other 90% of life. So the other 90% is all about what do we do after we overcome these challenges, right? You know, we've experienced these challenges. What do we do? What do we do afterwards? What is our mindset? How can we turn our struggles and challenges and learn from them? So challenges allow us to grow our foundation, not just build it. You know, I think a lot of us like to talk about having a good foundation in the church, right? Having a good foundation in and staying faithful, right? Having a good foundation in dating and spiritual relationships, marriage, for instance. But I think we actually rarely talk about building our foundation. So a lot of us have a strong foundation. How about increasing it further? Because I want to bring up an important point. Some of us in this room may not be struggling right now. We may have overcome our previous challenges. Your current foundation to overcome challenges may be strong now, but what about future challenges? What about the future struggles that you may need to overcome? And I want to give a very funny example, actually. And this is about an analogy. So I think all of you have been to the ministry house, so Chi and Demas' house and Jesse's house currently. You were all there at his balcony at the gender reveal party. So as you may have noticed, on the balcony, there's like this gazebo, right? There's like outdoor shelter. But what you don't know is that she and I have undergone like so many different trials, and we've overcome so many different challenges when we need to like set up that outdoor area. Because actually, you know, I think it was about March or April, right? You know, she was thinking about doing house renovations, right? You know, how can I make this house, you know, prettier, right? How can I make this house more inviting to guests? And it was nearing the summertime. So, you know, he approached me one day and he was like, all right, Denzel, hear me out, right? Hear me out. I have an idea. I have a good idea, a great idea, the best ever. And I'm like, sure, what is it? And he's like, okay, summer is coming, right? I want to put an outdoor area. I want to make an outdoor area for guests. I want a shelter, and I want to just decorate the place. You know, we're gonna use it for Bible talk. We're gonna use it to eat barbecue. We're gonna have all the guests. And I'm like, sure, sounds like a plan. So our first attempt wasn't actually that gazebo you saw. All we had was a tarp and some string. So what we did, our first attempt, so we had this tarp, and we just attached it with like some very like thin string, right? It's like 4 corners of like the wooden hedge that kind of like surrounds the balcony. So we did that, and the tarp lasted all for like good 2 hours. But eventually, the first challenge was that the string wasn't durable enough. It was like this very thin, like just tying string. So actually the string just snapped. So that's the first challenge. It's like, oh no, what do we do here, Chi? What can we do? So, and she was like, don't worry, I have an idea. So we using the same tarp, he went on Taobao, right? And he bought these like 4 large metal poles. And he also bought, to replace the string, he bought some like climbing rope. Just like this very thick climbing rope with like actual like metal harnesses attached to it. And I was like, okay, let's try this, right? So we set up the tarp, we got our new climbing rope, attached it to these 4 large metal poles. And you know what? That was better. The rope held. But we had another challenge. Because of the way the tarp was set up, so normally when you set up an outdoor area, you want it to be like this, right? So debris or like the rain doesn't like drop, like it doesn't accumulate, right? But actually the tarp, because we stretched it out so much, it was like more just straight. So it was collecting water and collecting a lot of trash. And I'm like, oh no, Chi, what do we do here? What can we do? And I was like, don't worry, I have a plan. I have an idea. So our third attempt So Chi, again on Taobao, he went ahead and bought this gazebo, right? Which is the same one actually in the gender reveal party. This beautiful green gazebo, right? Outdoor area, great, the best. So that actually lasted quite a long time. It lasted, I think, about 2 months maybe. But, tragedy struck. We faced another challenge. The typhoon. The typhoon. So a thunderous storm came and just devastated the balcony. And actually, one of the metal poles broke off, and the whole thing just collapsed. And I'm like, oh no, Chi, this is a disaster. What do we do? Like, what can we do? This is a mess. How can we fix it? And she was like, don't worry. I have a good idea, the great idea, the best ever. So he had another great idea. Let's go ahead and buy another gazebo. Let's buy a better gazebo, a more structural sound gazebo. That will work. That will work. So he went ahead and bought this reinforced gazebo, stronger poles, very thick metal poles, and it was a purple color. It looked better. It was stronger. It was great. And that lasted quite a while, right? But we faced another challenge. I was kind of laughing when Jesse told me this. But I remember one day, he was telling me, we noticed there was a big hole, right? And I'm like, oh no, Jesse, what happened here? And he was like, the craziest thing happened. Because one of the downsides of having a balcony is people throw their trash. They just throw whatever it is that they have lying around, and it just falls under the balcony. So Jesse was telling me, okay, so while you guys were gone, someone threw this big oxtail bone. It fell down and it pierced the gazebo, and now there's this gaping hole. And what's worse is that the day after there was this gusting wind that ripped the hole further. So now Jesse and I were too scared to host Friday Bible talks outside. So that's another challenge that we need to overcome. But the point I want to emphasize with this analogy is that challenges may be constant, but the challenges are different. They will always be different. So it's unlikely that one person is going to always face challenges when it comes to financial struggles, when it comes to perhaps losing your job, or perhaps tackling a certain emotion. At the same time, because these challenges are different, they force us to change. And at the end of the day, we can either grow or be outgrown by our problems. Which one will you choose? Come on. But at the end of the day, we can achieve great things if we just put our faith and hope in God. So Isaiah chapter 40, verse 31. So here it says, but those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. So at the end of the day, a lot of problems just require spiritual solutions. We don't need a lot of money. We don't need perhaps a social net. We just need our faith in God. And through God, we can do so many things. We can do so many great things than whenever we can alone. And another point I want to mention, spiritual growth from these challenges allows us to do greater things for God. And our foundation, the ability to overcome these challenges, comes from the experience of overcoming previous challenges. And think of it like this. Give it like this analogy, right? So let's say you're studying in primary school, right? You're a little, 5-year-old, and the learning material may seem, difficult as a 5-year-old, right? But eventually, as you learn how to sort of tackle certain problems. You sort of know what it is that you need to learn, right? So you overcome that, and eventually you go to secondary school. Okay, so that's a new challenge. You're facing more problems. You're facing more challenges. But as you work towards that, you overcome them. You use that to progress to high school and eventually university. Challenges given by God are done so progressively. He gives us smaller challenges bit by bit so we can grow spiritually bit by bit. So that we can grow consistently, so that we can consistently overcome these challenges. And I want to give an encouraging point to everyone. Our struggles, you may think that our struggles, our sort of position in these challenges disqualifies us. That could not be further from the truth. As a matter of fact, our challenges qualify us in the eyes of God. 2 Corinthians chapter 3, 4-6. Such confidence we have through Christ before God. Not that we are competent in ourselves to claim anything for ourselves, but our competence comes from God. He has made us competent as ministers of a new covenant, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter kills, but the Spirit gives life. And, when we're in a position of challenges, when we're in a position of struggling, it's very easy to think and very easy to doubt our sort of abilities. We sometimes doubt our confidence. Can we do this? Can we do that? But I want to give another analogy, actually. So, I know a lot of us are working professionals now, and some of us have experience when it comes to applying for jobs. And I noticed that, as I talk with my, friends in business, right, when they're applying for internships, when they're applying for jobs, right, they sometimes tell me that they sometimes don't apply to certain jobs if they don't meet all the requirements. So, in a lot of job postings, right, you get this long list of different requirements. Okay, you must be native in English, Cantonese, Mandarin. You must have a 3.6 GPA. You must have this skill. You must have that. And people are intimidated by that. And if they don't have if they don't tick all the check boxes, they just don't try. They don't apply. But I want to ask you guys, do you feel the same way when you do things for God? In the same way you may feel hesitant to apply for a job you don't feel qualified in, are you hesitant to study the Bible with someone because you don't feel qualified? Are you hesitant to lead your Bible talk because you don't feel qualified, because you don't feel experienced? Are you scared or perhaps uncomfortable with public speaking because you don't have the experience? But we shouldn't feel that way. Challenges, they exponentially increase our spirituality. They exponentially increase our experience in dealing with those challenges. And at the end of the day, they actually help us in doing so many great things for God. I want to give you an example, the example of my sort of own struggles, right? So when I give that communion, I told you guys when I was struggling with, right, in terms of family struggles, family background, bitterness, right? But after I did that communion, I noticed that my spirituality and what I'm able to do for the church and for God dramatically increased. After I did that communion, I started preaching, started leading Bible talk, and that is so amazing. Because I never would have been able to do that if I didn't do that communion. Had I not had that challenge to overcome, I wouldn't be mature. I wouldn't be experienced. I wouldn't be qualified enough because I won't know how to experience struggle, how to really experience a challenge. And I want to lift a few people up. So on the same topic of communions, I want to lift Shaw up, actually. So Shaw has talked extensively about his own struggles in terms of financial struggles. And I noticed that after Shaw did his communion, right, the way you're so elegant in the way you sort of convey yourself. You're more sort of confident in the way you can explain certain things. So for instance, I give the example of the men's preach-off. You actually did a pretty good job. I'm very impressed by that. And I feel like you wouldn't have been able to do that if you didn't do that communion and if you didn't overcome that struggle. And I want to lift up Jackson as well. Sort of at Jackson's D times in terms of building confidence. Again, there's a big change. There's a big progression, a big progress for Jackson. After he learned how to be more confident upstage, he's more fired up during song leading. He's so confident. He exudes confidence. And his public speaking is so much better now. It's great. And I want to lift up Livia as well. After Livia's own communion, she's able to sort of inspire her family, inspire her friends, bring them closer to God. And that would not have been possible if Livia didn't experience those challenges.
That's true.
At the end of the day, our experience, the foundation of our challenges, allow us to become better servants for God in so many ways. For instance, we can share our experiences when studying the Bible with people. Again, lots of people, although maybe different, face the same struggles. I've studied the Bible with people, and time again, the theme of family struggles comes up a lot. Maybe that's the same for you. Maybe it's a different challenge the people you're working with are experiencing. Why not share your experiences? Share how you overcame your own challenges to help them progress, to seek God, and really help them build their own foundation. We can also give better insights during Bible talks. Once we have the experience of overcoming certain challenges, We have better insights of how to deal with those challenges. That produces better thoughts, better ways of thinking, more ways of thinking towards these topics. We can perhaps better connect with people when sharing. We have a better understanding of how life works. We have a better understanding of how people work. Why not use that to better connect with people? And at the end of the day, we just gain a humble heart to serve others. And I want to give one last comforting point. No matter what struggle you're facing, no matter what challenge you persevered under, God will be by our side in every step of the way. Because at the end of the day, God is a caring Father. God knows what's in our hearts. He can see in our hearts. He knows on the things that we should be disciplined on, but He also knows when to discipline us. But He also knows when we simply need rest, when we simply need reassurance, guidance, support, just a shoulder to lean on. God will not give us anything more than what we currently could not bear. Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13. No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, He will also provide a way out so that you can endure in it. Matthew 11:28. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest.
Come on, Denzel.
At the end of the day, God has our backs. He will always have our backs during difficult times, even if you don't feel that way. And I want to encourage you yet again. At the same time that God has our back, at the end of our struggle, at the end of overcoming the challenge, God will restore us. He will restore our spirituality. He will restore our faith in Him. Job 42:10-17. After Job had prayed for his friends, the Lord restored his fortunes and gave him twice as much as he had before. All his brothers and sisters and everyone who had known him before came and ate with him in his house. They comforted him and consoled him over all the trouble the Lord had brought on him, and each one gave him a piece of silver and a gold ring. The Lord blessed the latter part of Job's life more than the former part. He had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 donkeys. And he also had 7 sons and 3 daughters. The first daughter he named Jemima, the second Keziah, and the third Karen Hapuch. Nowhere in all the land were there found women as beautiful as Job's daughters. And their father granted them an inheritance along with their brothers. After this, Job lived 140 years. He saw his children and their children to the 4th generation. And so Job died an old man and full of years. And we can see Job, for a large majority of his life, he overcame so many challenges, so many struggles, but he always kept faithful, never blaming God, always sticking to his faith. And we can see God rewarded that. You can see that Job had a great foundation, a great character of overcoming challenges. And as such, He restored them twofold. God is never far from any one of us in our time of need. We just need to reach out to Him. And that makes us more spiritual and brings us closer to God. And think of it, as we overcome these challenges, and just as long as we stay faithful, how much more can we serve God because of that? So I want to conclude today's lesson. So the title of today's lesson was Spiritual Pruning, all about challenges. And we talked about 2 points. Point number 1, the 10% of life. Okay, so we readily established life is full of challenges. It is the one constant that everyone faces. Those challenges may be different for each and every one of us. But we can be reassured of point 2, the other 90% of life. We are not defined by the 10% of our life in those challenges. We are not defined by our struggles. We are merely defined by how we react to those struggles, how we overcome those challenges. It's a matter of whether we stick to God or worldly things. And that is the end of the lesson, and that concludes the lesson.